Next, we have Doug Sansom. He currently serves as the Director of the National Accounts and Wholesale Origination for NRG Curtailment Solutions. This is a wholly owned subsidiary of NRG Energy. And Doug customizes demand response solutions for North American utilities. He has over 15 years of experience customizing smart grid solutions for both utilities, C&I customers, really in the US, Asia, and all over the world. I'm going to tell you where he graduated from because he let us know. He graduated from the United States Military Academy. And he has a civil engineering and an MBA from the Wharton School.
Be Navy.
That sounds pretty good.
Be Army.
Trying to emphasize, we have a really good panel right here. Next, we have Sacha. And Sacha Fontaine, that name to me sounds like a soap opera star, Sacha Fontaine. He's the Director of Energy Solutions at Siemens. And in this role, Sacha's been structuring and managing Siemens offerings to electric utilities, including solutions around microgrids and energy storage, EV infrastructure, DMS, and new grid analytic applications. And he spent nearly 12 years working for utilities and another 10 for utility vendors. So he has tremendous experience in the modernization of the grid from both sides of the table. And he applies that experience to guide clients in this new energy market. So we're not talking the old days, we're talking new. And finally, we have, who did I miss? Oh, Mike. Mike Byrnes is the Chief Operating Officer at SourceOne of Veolia. That's a Veolia company. And that's their North American full-service energy consulting subsidiary. And he develops and continues to manage Veolia's metering, energy management, and commodity management business lines. He served as the executive sponsor for several of the distributed energy projects and resiliency projects in New York. And he has held senior level positions at other organizations like Trigen and multiple engineering and operations positions at Con Ed in New York. And he also served as an engineering officer in the U.S. Merchant Marine. That's pretty hot. Okay.
I don't hear that very often.
I really don't say that very often. That's what you get when you stay out too late the night before. Sorry about that. All right, so let's get down to business with this team. So to date, many of the microgrid development has been focused on security and resiliency. We've heard a lot about that over the last day. Now, with more cost-effective storage technology and advanced controller analytics, we're now seeing consideration of the economic benefits beyond resiliency with implementation of microgrid solutions. So I'm going to put my first question to Doug. I want to know, Doug, can you describe NRG's demand response efforts and how it would work with a microgrid to provide economic value? And I want to add to that, if your microgrid potentially doesn't just reduce load and could potentially export, what can you do?
Great questions, Jackie. Thank you so much for that. You know, NRG is the country's largest integrated power provider in the United States. And so we see a lot of different types of resources, energy, new developments, ways to manage grids across a variety of markets in the U.S. And, you know, from that, we've been able to develop some interesting concepts. One that we are currently pushing is called asset-backed demand response. And for this conference, I would say that it's a little like microgrid light. The differences with a microgrid where you might completely disconnect from the grid, with asset-backed DR, what we're really doing there is disconnecting specific lines within a facility in order to manage load. Both microgrid and asset-backed DR have the ability to manage a load curve for the utility or for the premise itself. And so there's opportunities there. We see some of our work. We've done microgrids, by the way, in places like Princeton and other places around the country. But we see microgrids and we see things like asset-backed DR as a way for companies to work on their value equation in order to take advantage of demand response in a different way. We heard yesterday a lot of talk about the value of resiliency. How do you put a number on that? And ultimately, it's that value equation that allows companies and utilities to often spend money in order to manage your load curve, whether that's through a microgrid or it's through some sort of demand response program. So understanding how you get to that, to burn an entire microgrid, can be tough because it can be very expensive. Asset-backed DR is the lighter version of that because we're able to just manage very specific lines and very specific loads. And so this is how we're managing it today. Now you asked me, can we also export this to the grid? You know, we heard yesterday a lot of talk about how microgrids and regulations around microgrids, the value of microgrids, and I would suggest also demand response, are very local items. It depends a lot upon the local regulations, the local needs of the customer, the specific goals and objectives of people involved in that value chain. And so it really gets to what's going to be locally viable to be able to export stuff to the grid. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It's a challenging topic, and that was very helpful. Thank you. And I want to turn it to Patrick to just kind of, leverage what you just said and ask more about his controller technology and how it takes the economic solutions into consideration when designing and operating the microgrid.
Okay. So I think follow on Doug's comment about things that you may not have control, for example, market structure, pricing, and so on, market services available externally from the market. But in our last 2 days, we have been talking about how do you actually maximize the value stack of microgrids in order to accelerate more adoption, right? If we want to improve the economics. So if the question is about economics, I would further expand that into techno-economics. It's not about just running an optimization and say this is the plan. You actually have to be able to control the energy resources to meet internally in order to have extra to share outside. So the simple value proposition is you need ability to reshape your internal energy use so that you have available extra energy to be able to take advantage of the opportunity in the market. It sounds very simple, right? But if you think about this is, now if you have to be able to control internal resources to meet your internal need based on a set of economics, for example, people may demand shave or shift time of use, right, to reduce your energy bill. That's one set of economics. Externally, if you have extra energy, you would look at what time and what volume of energy can I supply to the market based on pricing, a different set of economics. But you cannot look at these two sets of economics independently because there's trade-off, right? Because if you have valuable resources inside, you're going to look at, is it better that I reduce my costs or is it better that I take additional revenue? That problem is real time and it's dynamic because you can plan and forecast the day before, but comes real time, the temperature condition change, the load changes, your resources availability is different, the pricing in the market is different. So you need ability to do co-optimization real time based on new information and make the best effort you can to meet you internally. For example, on a normal operation day, you may have, let's say, 5 units of energy that's available to share in the market. You want to capture that. But if the market pays you more, let's say it pays double, you're going to think and say, maybe I want to have 10 units available. So the ability to reshape your internal use to maximize your value stack is a very important capability. So not only optimizing it, but also now I have a control system actually can deliver and exercise those resources to fill that specific reshaped internal profile to allow you to capture the opportunity outside. So those are the key considerations in our solution that we provide today. So this is not something in the future. So real-time optimization and real-time control, taking advantage of real-time high-speed sensor to allow us to have better visibility. So that's really how we do it.
So from what you say, Patrick, I would say PXiSE and your efforts here in California especially are definitely on the cutting edge and doing things that could easily be replicated throughout the country when the market designs evolve to allow for such participation. Would you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I think at the end of the day, you have to have technology enable you to capture the economics. Today, we do too much analysis on the economic side to look at how payback looks like. If you cannot deliver that result, it's meaningless. If you look at the investment in the microgrid, let's say 100%, the control system, the smart, that allows you to capture the return, is only 3% of the cost. Most of your cost is in the battery and renewable and power system. So you better have a really smart solution to capture your value stack so that your economic works for you.
So this is cool because what we have here is a group that are from different areas in the country, and I'm going to bounce over to Sacha because they implemented a very creative solution in Bronzeville, and he'll tell you about how Siemens partnered with ComEd to create what's called clustered micro.
Just use that term now to describe the economic benefit of a privately owned microgrid goes beyond just reliability and sustainability, and now it's clustering, putting two or more microgrids together so that the strengths of both of them can be shared. And really, the whole is more than the sum of parts. For Bronzeville, that's made up of two microgrids. One is for IIT, the Illinois Institute of Technology, and the other one is the Bronzeville community. So what's new about it is that it's a utility-operated microgrid without owning the generation. So the benefit of it for the two microgrids is that they're able to exchange energy based on hourly economic bids. And in the future, or even in this case, what it allows is either privately owned or combination of ownership of microgrids to opt into a cluster. And therefore now not just benefit from the economics internally, but the economics of the greater part of multiple microgrids. So the way we see that benefiting greater is really doing proper planning for good characteristic, complementary characteristics for these adjacent microgrids. And what we're talking about is really building on distributed generation, smart controllers, so integrating your microgrid controller, and then this is a tertiary level. So we have a software component on a server. This one's called the Siemens Spectrum Microgrid Management System. And what it does is it looks at the benefits, through planning, it looks at the benefits of having complementary load profiles. So in the case of Bronzeville, we have an area that's characterized as more of a business park, and then one that's more residential. The load profiles are complementary. Load profiles for a residential area will have peaks before and after work, and in the business park will be throughout the day. The other aspect is looking at the renewable generation. You don't want both microgrids to be solely on one type of renewable, such as solar. So if you have a stormy day pass through, you've minimized your energy exchange and the economic benefit from that. And finally, same concept for battery storage. And if we zoom out of our North American optics, we don't even have to go that far out. We can look at Puerto Rico in terms of having to rebuild their infrastructure. They've gone to 8 connected, or their plan is to go to 8 connected microgrids. But if I go to even greener fields, to developing country where the grid infrastructure, the backbone, is not serving the entire country, all the citizens of the country, a growth of microgrids independently put into clusters will eventually, with interconnection between the clusters, will build that backbone for a country, which in the end ends up being what we've heard a lot about, which is a truly distributed grid. So that's the way we're seeing it. We see, from traditional microgrids to smart microgrids, and now to clustering, and eventually what we would term DERMS, participating microgrid. So DERMS is in distributed energy resource management system. So really integrating microgrids with renewables, demand response, battery. Basically anything that can be controlled through a microgrid would go into the system for an entire jurisdiction, entire utilities grid to be controlled through this government participation.
Thank you, Sacha. You can see, everyone, that these are creative solutions. They're customized for these particular scenarios. So maybe in a bit, after we hear from Mike, we will probably talk about some of the regulatory challenges or what needs to change to make these solutions something that can be replicated in other areas or other regions. But I'm going to put a hold on that, and I'm going to bounce over to Mike because he led an effort in Brooklyn at the King's Plaza to do a creative solution, microgrid solution that is now an interconnection with the larger grid. And I want to understand how this works and how do you think this is something that's cost effective and provides value to the larger grid?
The King's Plaza Mall is in Brooklyn, and not really the cool part of Brooklyn. It's more way out on the border of Queens, almost to Kennedy Airport, right on Flatbush Avenue. And the mall was built in the 70s when Con Ed and the city both together were going broke. And they had this big mall they wanted to put in, probably a 6 megawatt load, and Con Ed wouldn't serve them, not without huge capital infrastructure. So the mall built their own plant. So at the time it was 12 megawatts of big marine diesel engines on natural gas. And they've been running islanded fine for the last 40 years. Veolia is the operator of the plant. We've had the operations contract for about the last 5 or 6 years. And we started talking to the mall about interconnecting them to the grid. For example, today's load there at the mall is 3.5 megawatts this morning. And they've got 12 megawatts of generation. So that's a valuable asset. It's a constrained area for Con Edison. We approached Con Ed and we started talking to them about, how do we do an interconnection? How much will you guys put in? The answer we got from Con Ed was nothing, which was not surprising because it's capital infrastructure. But what they did is Con Ed has excellent load curtailment programs, and New York ISO has also load curtailment programs, and we're allowed to basically be in both of those. So between the load curtailment money you can get for the summer and for the efficiency gains, so for example, on a typical day like today, I have to have probably three megawatt engines running to cover a 3.5 megawatt load. So if one of the engines trips, the other has to be able to come up and take the entire load, right? And at 3.5 megawatts, if I only had one engine running, it would trip off. So that's what we call spinning reserve. So you've got 9 megawatts of generation running to satisfy a 3.5 megawatt load. Not the most efficient place to run. I have to have 13 people there with crews around the clock. So there's a lot of advantages to connecting. And there have been a lot of advantages to connecting for probably the last 20 years. So the mall got new ownership. We talked to the new ownership who was willing to invest the money. And we spent about a year of, probably about 2 years of work and about 9 months of construction. And we just went live over this last weekend, Mother's Day weekend. We tied into Con Ed and shut the engines down for the first time in 40 years, which is pretty amazing. There's a surprising number of these plants out there, large plants with stranded generation that you can get economic and societal benefit by tying them in. And one of the things we went back to Con Ed was, it's a place of refuge for the neighborhood. When they have an emergency, the next Sandy hits, the mall was lit up for the last one. That part of Brooklyn was flooded. There was lots of people who needed places to go. Parts of it were blacked out, and because the mall is not connected to the grid, as long as they have a gas supply, they're operating. So that stays working, and it's so far it's been a tremendous project.
Thank you. Hey, I'm going to bounce over to an area that I'm extremely passionate about, which is energy storage. And I want to understand how the energy storage component of these microgrids is impacting the economics. So oftentimes too, we'll see customers that want to have a cleaner, renewable solution, and we add the energy storage in to store the solar or the wind or whatever. But I want to understand, if you want to achieve that clean solution, how does the price and the optimization of the energy storage impact the overall value proposition? Is it going to make the microgrid more economic, or is it going to make it cost too much? So I'm going to bounce that to all of you guys to see who wants to jump in first. And there's no right answer, except that you have to say that the energy storage stuff is game-changing and cutting edge.
So, yeah, certainly one of the German instances might talk about, operating, the 9 megawatt system for a 3 megawatt. So, if you think about a battery is both, a generator and a demand, right? We all know that. So, the traditional thinking is that we just store energy and then release the energy again. That's a simple way of thinking about not optimizing or maximizing the value stack of a battery. Because a battery, when you use it to hybridize other assets, become much more valuable. So we have done using battery to hybridize a thermal generator. For example, in case of, like Mike's situation, you have three megawatt generator, 9 megawatt supplying a 3 megawatt. If you use a small 3 megawatt battery with only, say, 15-minute duration or 20-minute duration, I can use this as a spinning reserve to cover for the other generators. So you only need one 3 megawatt generator so that you can now save fossil fuel, save maintenance costs, right? On top of that, if you're using the battery for primary frequency control instead of using the generator that's slow frequency control, you now take the advantage like a Toyota Prius to say, hey, when is the battery should kick in and when is the engine should kick in? That's the ability of a truly optimized solution like PXiSE can do, is to say, hey, I can actually not only have the optimization capability, like I said earlier, right? You actually have the control capability to make it happen. So that's why a battery becomes valuable if you apply the right control system to it.
Thank you. Does anybody want to add to that?
I would, and I think batteries are clearly the technology of the future. The tariffs have to adjust. There's not good public policy yet. With on-peak, off-peak, rates, enough for spread between them to get an economic justification in a lot of places. The mall was a great example. We're not connected to the grid, right? So now that I am, that may be a better solution, right? I can now, the low curtailment money is I have to run my plant and then use those other 2 machines to be able to send 6 megawatts out to the grid to Con Ed, which is what they're, that's why they're interested. But yeah, clearly to me, batteries are and any kind of energy storage solution is going to be clearly part of the equation. And any microgrid we look at now is solar plus storage and generation.
Yeah, I'd add to that, to build on that. You've got the benefit that Patrick mentioned, but part of it is also, since you have a battery that is going to charge and discharge, it gives you the opportunity for price arbitrage. So that's not something, you don't have that stability in pricing from diesel generation because of the fuel costs, which you'll have from electrical costs. So that's stability of price arbitrage are other true economic factors to encourage batteries. And what we are seeing from our side is that we're seeing less diesel, less emitting generation being required in bids.
So at just one point, and to my generator friends in the audience, for today, batteries are not that price competitive with generators. But that's obviously going to change over time as prices come down and scale economies take effect. Clearly, there are some, in today's market, there's some very specific situations to be able to monetize batteries in a way that's going to make a value equation work for the customer. The trick is to really be able to customize that. Fortunately, there are a few places around the country. New York is one, California is another, Massachusetts, a few places where there's significant incentive money on the table. Global adjustment in Canada is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So there's certainly opportunities out there to work the math, to find the right equation, the right combination of resources and control technologies to really maximize value. But it really gets down to the local value stack.
There's a project that just went commercial in New York City, JFK, the new TWA hotel. If you guys, anybody flies in there, it used to be a Terminal 5. It was TWA was this very cool retro 1960s terminal that a developer came in and made that his hub and then built a hotel convention center next door to it. And he decided he didn't want to be connected to the grid, and he's doing this with his hotels all over the country. And it's a completely island microgrid gas-fired generation, battery storage, gas chillers, diesel backup. Veolia is the operator in that. It's a fabulous site. And he's using his batteries for just that, right? So he didn't have to put in as much generation capacity. So the batteries charge overnight and they discharge in the afternoon. And so far, grand opening is today, if anybody wants to book a hotel room. So, and so far it's great. It works, 20 years from now. They're not connected to the grid.
Right. So if you think about earlier, I made a comment about reshaping, your internal need in order to make available energy from the outside. So a battery is a flexible resource to allow you to do that effectively. Because your ability to reshape your whole load profile on a daily basis or hourly basis, that's the key for you to capture the external value, right? And so when you do that, at the same time, you can do arbitrage, you can do whatever other tasks that you want the battery to do. The ability to reshape the load profile is the key.
I'm with Patrick on that one. So I guess, what about the wholesale markets? I know some of you have projects that are participating in the wholesale markets or are envisioning that in the future. Microgrid solutions can also offer reliability services and capacity to the wholesale market. But what do you see that needs to change to make this happen? Or does nothing need to change? Where do you think fall on this topic, on the wholesale?
So from the NRG perspective, we think that the markets are too small, they're too limited. So there are a couple of places around the country that you can actively trade and buy capacity and energy. We'd like to see open competition across the entire United States. And that would, I think, would actually benefit the customer in many ways. It would bring down prices, it creates choices for both residential and C&I customers, and would actually, I think, help accelerate just the sheer size and scope of opportunities, not just for energy storage, but also asset-backed demand response, microgrids, et cetera. Right now, they're pretty limited, really, in the geographies where they're located. So this would, I think, really benefit this entire industry if we could have open competition.
The complexity I would add to it. Dealing with any of the other services is so difficult, so complex, it really precludes small players. You need very good advisors, very good consultants, and those cost money, and unless you have scale, you can't afford to pay for them. So they're really difficult to deal with unless you're really large and that wholesale market participant.
Yeah, so to that point, getting an access point to the wholesale market is that critical part. And so for Bronzeville, again, these microgrids were able to participate because of the utility. So that was their access point to the wholesale market, which simplified it a lot. They avoided all the consultants, all the lawyers that they needed to really
So oftentimes we talk about technologies going at a pace faster than regulation, right? Faster than the market. Right? So if I put ourselves into the ISO, let's say, perspective, the ISO needs the resources, for example, a microgrid, to be dependable. So you have to prove to them that when you want to show up, we actually showed up. Now, with technology now available to make your microgrid more dependable, because you can control your output into the grid, because you can control your internal resources better, right? So you can play outside the market better. As an industry, we can go to prove that and say, hey, microgrids are more dependable. We ought to have better market services available. So until that happens, what's actionable for you is to be prepared for the market, right? You want a solution that says, hey, no matter what the market services is, it doesn't matter if it's voltage control, real power, reactive power. You have ability and ready all the time. When the market's ready, you're ready.
I love it when Patrick says what I'm thinking, so this is good. But you can hear there's obviously diverse positions on these topics, so which is great, because it really does show the differences in the geography and the business models. And I think that's really important, because it grounds us and makes us realize that there's reality. And I want to ask our team here if there's any other comments they want to make before we open it up to the audience for questions. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot, because you are really experts in this space and have done some very creative solutions to achieve benefits beyond just the walls of the microgrid. So I'm first going to ask our team here if they'd like to add anything before we open it up to the audience.
Well, I'd be curious to hear what the other panelists think, but I get a lot of questions about EVs and EV participation in microgrids,
Yes.
the infrastructures, the charger infrastructures for EV. I find that it's tricky even considering both of them separately. I find that the EV VGI, vehicle to grid, is kind of far out from what we're doing right now, and I'm not sure how the participation for personal vehicle owners is going to be into the vehicle to grid. So for that, give me a moment to explain. I had a utility who's looking at a business case of the scenario where there was a baseball game and an influx of people. This is considering that there's a, let's say, high penetration of electric vehicles. People would be driving into the stadium, so there's going to be a peak, temporary peak in energy or demand at that time. But the good thing from their initial analysis was they're bringing their power supplies with them. They're bringing the batteries of their cars. Looking at that use case in a little bit more detail, what they realized is that even if they are using, they're relying on this vehicle to grid integration to use the batteries of the electric vehicles to really balance out this peak energy use during the game. 3 hours or 4 hours later, when the game's done, people want to leave. They don't want to hang out for another hour or 90 minutes in order to have their charge go up by 15 or 20 miles for them to go home. So when we talk about personal vehicles, I think that there's a consumer psychology that we really don't know. That's what I'm saying. When we're talking about EV chargers, the infrastructure that goes with EVs, I see that as, in fact, I see it because now clients are asking for standards related. I see it as demand response. In fact, the standard we're getting asked for, that's getting popular in the craft, is open ADR for the chargers. So I wanted to hear what the other, my own questions for the panel as well.
We talked about that, so I'm glad that you mentioned it, and thank you.
So we see basically three major forces driving this industry in the future. They're going to be decarbonization, which has been spoken about a lot, digitalization, which is really kind of the Internet of Things, or remote control, where you can look at the entire asset, the entire grid, and decentralization. And microgrids and asset-backed DR are really great tools to realize all three of these goals, to meet all those different forces that are driving this industry. Because there's ways to do it. You can put renewables into the microgrid, so that's going to help with your decarbonization. There are ways to manage, obviously, remote opportunities there. And of course, decentralization is the essence of microgrid, putting resources out on the edge of the grid structure as opposed to everything being centralized. So I think the future is bright for microgrids, and potentially for every company in this room. It's just going to continue to expand. The more that we can open up markets in the United States in every location, the more we can bring in competition to allow customers choice, and utilities then have options on different technologies and different things put in place. I think the better we're going to be able to find the right value equations and right value creation for those locations.
Just one comment on the regulators. The technology, everybody in this room is moving way past what the regulators are allowing us to do and what the utilities are able to let you do. The utilities in most cases are not the enemy. I mean, we have great relationships with Con Ed. We couldn't have gotten most of our projects done without their help. And they want to get things done, but the regulators are undermanned, underfunded. At one point in New York a couple of years ago, they were all on 4-day weeks, with 1-day furloughs. They can't keep up with us. So that's my one observation. All the stuff we're talking about, a lot of these things don't exist yet.
So you can simply think about the electric vehicle as a mobile battery. It is a battery on wheels, right? So if you think of that concept as okay, I can use that battery to meet your driving need, which is an internal need, or use it to meet an external need, which is in the market. It's no different than a microgrid. Like the concept is very simple. Whether you look at one vehicle or a group of vehicles, you still have to look at the techno-economic considerations, because vehicle batteries are different than traditional power battery that we use in the grid, right? So if you don't understand the charge and discharge limitation of the EV, you can't put this straight apart. That's why the controller that wants to participate in vehicle to grid has to understand the limitation technology-wise, what they can or cannot do, and the user's preference on how many miles do I want to go back home, right, at the end of the day. So those has to be considered almost like a moving microgrid in a way. So if it's plugged in at your home, it's very different than it's plugged in at work. It's a different set of economics. So you better be smart enough to make those decisions. So either you rely on a master controller to help you, or the controller on board your car better have that capability.
Yeah, for that, what you're mentioning is the primary use of the battery. And if it's in a microgrid, its primary use is to support that microgrid. If it's in a vehicle, its primary use is for transportation. So yes, it does have to have that intelligence to reserve enough to the use of the driver. The only scenario where I see this being, where the primary purpose may actually change within the day is either a fleet service of a fleet of electric vehicles, where they're used, let's say, in the daytime, and in the evening, their primary purpose can now switch from transportation to now supporting a microgrid or supporting the grid. Same thing with a portion of public transportation vehicles or buses. So I could see that, but yeah, the primary purpose of the battery does need to switch from transportation to support for that to really be useful for users.
From a control standpoint, it's still the same building block, right? So that's why I believe control of a microgrid is the building block for a bidirectional two-way grid. You have to have that capability everywhere in order to have transacted energy to occur.
I'm just quoting Patrick up here the whole time, so I like it. Not that I don't like you guys. Remember, we already talked about that. So, hey, let's break it out into the audience and see if we have any interesting questions or comments or ways to, oh, yeah. Well, how are we doing that through the? I didn't do the Slido. I took a poll, and the poll said don't do the Slido for this panel.
Well, we've got Slido. It's got the green up
All right. Let's bring it on to this over here, and please announce your name too.
Julieta Giralde from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. I have two questions. The first one, you ended up describing some of the issues, right? We hear a lot that the technology is ready. We heard it from Patrick. We heard it yesterday. I think Andrea mentioned that too. And that it's a question of creating a marketplace for it. So what do we need? Do we need demonstrations? Do we need pilot projects? Do we need studies that show the value? So a little bit like, how can we really get there to allow regulators to make these decisions, or ISOs to be comfortable to create the markets? And the second one is, Sacha, I think from Siemens, commented on the project where there's a cluster of microgrids. And so in there, how do you really see critical for network microgrids to make sense, to be able to transact with another microgrid? So basically enabling this transactive energy or peer-to-peer. Is that really critical to the business case? And will that really help advance the value stream?
If you don't mind, I'll start with that. Yeah. So when you say peer-to-peer, are you alluding to blockchain?
Not necessarily, but you mentioned there's two microgrids, and that there could be a benefit of exchanging energy from one to the other, but that's not really allowed in the regulatory environment. So you may have gotten an exception for the project or the demonstration, but
right, so
it's typically not able to be included in the business case because it's not allowed.
Right, so these are operated by the same utility
they're able to do that. And really, the question is simple: we have to get regulators to evolve faster or at the pace that the technology is evolving. Because we're there, we're proving it out. But yes, there needs to be that was a question we discussed as well. What needs to change in the regulatory environment? And the way I see it is the rules for incentives, whether that's cost relief for participating in the microgrid, the ability to exchange energy between microgrids, or special participant tariffs and rates. Does that answer your question?
Kevin, are you able to break out in terms of your subscription base, what percentage are regulators who read microgrid now? You've got a micro.
Oh, right, yeah. If they've registered for the site, which a lot of folks do either for our newsletter or to download